Hello there, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to World News Program, coming to you live on All 24 News. I'm your host, Karim Zachary, and coming up next are the top stories. In the last 48 hours, 350 Palestinians were killed in 38 new Zionist massacres. Many were martyred and injured in the bombing of Nusayrat camp, Jabalia, and Beit Lahia by the occupation forces. Hamas warns against the occupation's attempts to annex the West Bank and Gaza. The Palestinian government insists that the Zionist entity must follow the International Court of Justice's decision, and it sees the attack on UNRWA as politically motivated by the occupation. Zionist aggression persists in southern Lebanon. The Houthis claim to have targeted an American warship in the Gulf of Aden, while Iran denies involvement in an attack that resulted in the death of 3 American soldiers. And at the Africa-Italy Summit, Algeria underscores the impact of weak infrastructure on African integration. Minister Attaf advocates for Algeria's energy security strategy, emphasizes the need for $170 billion in annual investments for Africa, and calls for an integrated vision for the continent's facilities. The details after the break. Hello again and welcome to the details. First off, in our topical news, Zionist forces carried out 38 new massacres in Gaza, resulting in 350 deaths, including 24 children in the Khan Yunis bombing over the past 48 hours. The Gaza Ministry of Health reports a total of 26,422 martyrs and 65,087 injured since the start of the Zionist aggression on October 7th. Monday's Zionist raids on Palestinian homes resulted in dozens of martyrs and injuries. Occupation artillery also targeted an UNRWA school in Ar-Riman neighborhood, causing the death of at least 10 Palestinians among the displaced persons. Osama Ayadi has the story.
As the Zionist forces unleashed relentless attacks on different parts of the Gaza Strip, Palestinians endured a series of bombings from Zionist tanks along with aerial shelling on Sunday night and Monday morning. The grim aftermath saw dozens of Palestinian civilians reportedly killed and numerous others injured.
It's a building consisting of 3 floors that had approximately 70 or 80 displaced people inside. As you can see, the building has become rubble and debris. There is no one left alive. They are all in pieces, cut up and shard pieces.
In the wake of this intense shelling that reduced entire residential buildings to rubble, Palestinian emergency teams swiftly raced to various camps, working tirelessly to rescue the wounded. Al-Nasser Hospital, which was threatened by the Zionist forces, ordering staff and patients to evacuate, received dozens of wounded and others martyred. The Zionist army pressed on, widening its assault on the southern half of the war-torn territory, concentrating on Khan Yunis, Gaza's second largest city, and its adjoining refugee camp of the same name.
We are neighbors in the area. We have relatives who were displaced at the Abu Mutawa family house. 2 missiles were fired at them. We heard at night that our relatives were martyred, along with everyone else in the place. We have 3 people. We have 3. The aunt of my wife, her son, and her daughter. They are still under the rubble. We came in the morning to remove the rubble, to get them out. We got a lot of people out, but our people are still under the rubble.
Aid workers also bravely transported injured Palestinians from a Nusayrat refugee camp to Al-Aqsa Hospital in Deir al-Balah during various attacks. The relentless assault included a strike on a civilian building in Zawaida, killing at least 13 people and wounding others. Additionally, casualties were reported in Al-Shati camp, further adding to the grim toll.
Regarding Shari camp, an inhabited house was hit inside the camp nearby the military clinic, and some of the martyrs were transferred to Shifa Hospital. The situation is hard in the area because there is a difficulty to reach the place through narrow streets.
The genocidal war waged by the Zionist forces against Palestinians in the Gaza Strip is intensifying, spreading its assault across every corner of the territory. The escalating violence has made it nearly impossible for Palestinian authorities to accurately tally the death toll. Continuous bombings and the challenges faced by the rescue teams struggling to access numerous areas for life-saving efforts or to recover bodies from beneath the rubble further complicate the situation.
Hamas warns against Zionist coalition calls to annex the West Bank and Gaza, accusing them of planning displacement and ethnic cleansing. Hamas urges the international community and the UN to condemn the coalition conference as promoting a fascist agenda based on ethnic cleansing.
The ruling fascist coalition of the Zionist entity held a conference yesterday calling for the annexation of the West Bank and Gaza to the occupying entity and settlement terrain, with the participation of dozens of ministers and representatives in the Zionist Knesset, revealing the premeditated intentions to implement the crime of displacement and ethnic cleansing against our Palestinian people. In addition, its organization reflects this rogue entity's disregard for international laws and resolutions and the recent decisions of the International Court of Justice, which demanded that it take all measures to stop the genocide.
And in the latest development on the ground, the Palestinian resistance targeted a logistical support and positioning point for enemy soldiers and vehicles in the Sudaniya area, northwest of Gaza City, using missiles and artillery. Al-Quds Brigades, the military arm of the Islamic Jihad movement, shared a video on Telegram showing the targeting of occupation soldiers and vehicles. They also bombed gatherings of enemy soldiers and vehicles in Khan Yunis and successfully destroyed a Zionist tank near the Hassan Salama Mosque. Palestinian resistance forces collaborated against Zionist occupation vehicles in the southern Gaza Strip as part of Operation Al-Aqsa Flood, as shown in video clips shared by Al-Qassam Brigades, the military wing of the Hamas movement, on Telegram. The Palestinian government calls on the Zionist entity to adhere to the International Court of Justice's decision. Prime Minister Mohammed Shtayyeh describes the decision as crucial legally, politically, and humanitarianly, accusing the occupation of committing genocide. He welcomes the UN Secretary General's decision to refer the matter to the Security Council, urging action to end the aggression against the Palestinian people.
قرار محكمة العدل الدولية مهم.
The decision of the ICJ holds significant political, legal, and humanitarian implications. Israel must adhere to it fully, including the establishment of state passages for aid delivery. Ceasefire and cessation of aggression are necessary to facilitate aid distribution and enable people to rebuild their lives and homes. We appreciate the UN Security General's decision to transfer the ICJ's file to the UN Security Council, urging the Council to respond to this call and demand an end to the aggression against our people. Of particular importance in the ICJ's decision is the accusation against Israel of genocide, following numerous condemnations of its racist and apartheid-like treatment of the Palestinian people by various organizations and nations.
Similarly, the Palestinian Prime Minister asserts that the attack on UNRWA is a deliberate political move by the entity, citing past incidents in Gaza and the West Bank. He expresses hope for a reversal of the decision by countries that temporarily suspended their aid.
The attack on UNRWA is a political attack by Israel. For a long time it has been fighting the relief agency and the camps everywhere, and we have seen this in Gaza, Jenin, Tulkarem, Balata, Aqaba Jabr, Al-Fawar, and Al-Dahisha.
In a related matter, Spanish Foreign Minister José Manuel Álvarez announced continued support for UNRWA with Spain tripling its funding to around 50 million euros. Spain aligns with countries like Ireland and Norway in maintaining aid. However, Austria suspended payments pending a full investigation into allegations of UNRWA employees participating in Al-Aqsa flood operation. Japan also suspended additional funding, expressing concern over the allegations involving UNRWA employees in Palestinian resistance operations. Palestinians carrying their children and belongings are fleeing Khan Yunis in search of safety, but even areas considered safe are being bombed, putting lives at risk. Medical facilities in the city, meanwhile, are on the verge of collapse as fighting continues across the Palestinian enclave. Sofian Kenturi reports.
In a tragic escape from Khan Yunis, Palestinian families, holding their kids and belongings, are making a run for safety down south. Despite being designated as a safe corridor by the Zionist forces, this journey has turned into a dangerous gamble. Detainees and eyewitnesses report on mistreatment by the Zionist occupation, which shows zero concern for age or medical conditions.
Through a drone speaker, they asked all displaced people living in Khan Yunis to leave immediately towards Al Muwasi using a Bahar street. We left based on their request to protect our children from a definite death. So we came here, and my father, who is over 65 years old, they took him and detained him.
With tensions skyrocketing, the Gaza Health Ministry sends out warning of imminent collapse in Khan Yunis medical facilities, exacerbating the humanitarian crisis. As violence sweeps through the Palestinian enclave, civilians, desperate for refuge, brave perilous routes to Rafah, lugging some of their possession along.
We have been suffering greatly because there are no longer doctors or anyone in the hospital. The injured remains lying in his bed. Until this moment, until we left the hospital, there was no longer a doctor, nurse, or anything except us. We remained in the hospital.
Residents recount spine-chilling tales of being randomly detained by Zionist forces, adding to move anguish to the already traumatized innocent people. The Zionist aggression on Gaza has uprooted the majority of its 2.3 million inhabitants, leaving devastating in its wake and plunging communities into dire shortages of essential like food, water, and medicine.
The situation in the school was very difficult. The children were thrown on the dirt, without water, nothing. We don't have any milk. We stayed in the school because it was next to the hospital. We could go and get treatment there. God is sufficient for us, and He is the best disposer of affairs.
As the world looks on, the Palestinian struggle continues highlighting the urgent need to halt hostilities and restore dignity and security for everyone caught up in the crossfire of the ruthless Zionist war machine.
On Monday, the Zionist occupation continued its aggression against villages and towns in southern Lebanon, focusing on the Ras Nakura area. The Lebanese National News Agency reported artillery shelling by Zionist forces on the southern outskirts caused civilian casualties, forcing hundreds of families to flee their homes in the region. Houthi military spokesman Yahya Sari announced on Monday the firing of a missile at a U.S. Navy ship, the Louis B. Puller, while it sailed in the Gulf of Aden. The statement mentioned that the targeted ship provided logistical support to American forces involved in attacks on Yemen. Sari confirmed the Houthis' decision to restrict navigation for ships linked to the Zionist entity or heading to occupied Palestinian territories ports in the Red Sea and the Arabian Sea. On Monday, Iran refuted any involvement in a drone attack that resulted in the death of 3 American soldiers in Jordan and left at least 34 others injured. Iranian Foreign Ministry spokesman Nasser Kanani dismissed the accusations as political slander, asserting that such claims aim to distort facts in the region and highlight Iran's influence on third parties, including the Zionist entity.
Resistance groups in the region do not take orders from the Islamic Republic of Iran in their decisions and actions, while the Islamic Republic of Iran does not welcome the development of conflict in the region. It does not interfere in the decisions of the resistance groups on how to support the Palestinian nation or defend themselves and their people against any aggression and occupation. Repeating baseless accusations against Iran is the projection and conspiracy of those who see their interests in dragging America's feet into a new battle in the region and inciting it in the expansion and escalation of the crisis to cover up their problems.
And in other topical news, Algerian Foreign Minister Ahmed Attaf stated that the inadequate infrastructure in Africa has a negative impact on the effective implementation of the Continental Free Trade Zone. This situation hinders the realization of opportunities for integration and shared prosperity. Speaking at the Africa-Italy Summit in Rome on behalf of President Abdelmajid Tebboune, Mr. Attaf highlighted the close correlation between limited foreign investment and insufficient infrastructure in Africa.
Most studies indicate a close connection between weak foreign investments and weak infrastructure in Africa, which, for example, has only paved its road network by no more than 25%.
Similarly, the Algerian foreign minister stated that Africa requires an annual investment of about 130 to 170 billion US dollars to address infrastructure needs, emphasizing that weak infrastructure results in a 2% reduction in annual economic growth.
I would like to point out one of the most important obstacles facing the African continent in the field of infrastructure development, which is the problem of financing. African Union estimates confirm that the financial gap for providing distinguished infrastructure services on our continent ranges between 130 and 170 billion US dollars annually.
The Algerian Minister of Foreign Affairs further emphasized the importance of adopting an integrated vision for the facilities in African countries to maximize their intended benefits. He recalled Algeria's involvement in structural projects with a regional and integrative dimension as examples of this approach.
Hence comes the importance of investing in the infrastructure sector and basic facilities, especially in vital areas such as energy, transportation, and communications, with the necessity of working to give these facilities an integrated vision to maximize the benefits expected from them.
Algerian Foreign Minister Ahmed Attaf represented President Abdelmajid Tebboune at the Italian African Summit in Rome on Monday. Attaf highlighted Algeria's commitment as a reliable energy partner and addressed challenges in energy security. Algeria's participation aimed to prioritize African countries' needs in the African-Italian partnership, proposing projects for Sahel and Euro-Mediterranean development. Mr. Attaf called for the inclusion of energy security in the core objectives of the Italian Mattei plan, emphasizing the importance of mobilizing resources for sustainable and effective energy partnerships. In a different matter, Algeria is committed to improving the environmental performances of the natural gas industry, aiming for a fair transition. The focus is on reducing natural gas consumption and gradually transitioning to solar and wind energy, according to Minister Mohamed Arqab.
Our vision in this field is included in the limitation of consumption of this energy and exchanging it with the renewable solar and wind energy. There will be soon the launch of a station for the production of solar energy with a general production of 3,000 megawatts. Algeria has committed to the improvement of the effectiveness of environmental performance for the production of natural gas, for fair, comprehensive and realistic transition, diminishing the emission of carbon gas.
On the same occasion, the Algerian minister highlighted the significance of the upcoming 7th Forum of Heads of Gas Exporting Countries, scheduled for the end of February in Algeria. He emphasized the forum's importance in advocating for gas energy as a fundamental component of the energy transition.
The Forum of Heads of Gas Exporting Countries constitutes a space for defending the interests of member states that are working to preserve natural gas, which is considered one of the last environmentally polluting resources and essential to the energy transition. Natural gas is a clean energy, and its technologies evolving from year to year, enabling its proper utilization while considering environmental preservation.
Still with Algeria-related news, the first meeting of the Algerian-Tunisian Border Regions Committee discusses ways to enhance trade, improve attractiveness, and develop a joint strategy to address risks. Zara Farjani has the details.
As part of the continuous efforts for cooperation by the two North African nations, the first session of the joint Algerian-Tunisian Commission for the Development of Border Areas was launched on Monday in the capital Algiers. This two-day event translates the leaders' decisions to unite forces and tackle shared challenges through a joint approach, fostering collaboration between the neighboring nations. In this session, both nations aim to boost cooperation, partnership, and development, particularly in the border region. The goal is to stimulate economic activity and trade exchanges, ultimately improving living conditions for the population and making the border crossing more appealing and efficient.
Developing border crossings and making them poles of development. Everyone is aware that the largest number of land crossings is shared by our country with Tunisia. They must be developed in view of the importance they have in terms of people movement and commercial exchanges, allowing them to keep pace with development challenges in our two countries. Secondly, developing a joint strategy at the local level to confront major threats.
During the joint bilateral committee meeting, the Tunisian Minister of Interior disclosed that Algeria and Tunisia have a shared security concern. They are actively coordinating efforts to protect border areas from terrorist threats and combat smuggling and illegal immigration networks in a constructive manner.
We are both working to strengthen security in the border areas to protect our countries from threats of terrorist groups and to confront smuggling networks. In this regard, we have the right to praise the fruitful and constructive coordination that exists between the security services at the level of common border strip of our two countries. The situation taking place in the regional and international arena requires us to do more than ever and be more vigilant.
It's worth noting the inaugural Joint Commission is anticipated to conclude with the interior ministers of both countries signing a memorandum of understanding. This agreement will outline practical and on-the-ground mechanisms to be implemented in the future within specific deadlines.
To other news now. On Monday, protesting farmers encircled Paris with tractor barricades and drive-slows, blocking highways to exert pressure on the government regarding the future of their industry, citing impacts from the repercussions of the Ukraine war. The story by Islam Said now.
Nationwide farmers' protests in France have escalated, posing a challenging week for the government. Long lines of tractors have blocked highways near Paris and across the country. Approximately 15,000 police officers, mainly concentrated in Paris, have been deployed to prevent protesters from entering the capital.
Everywhere in France, across all territories, we will continue this movement with a very concrete objective of having emergency measures announced concerning the core of our profession, meaning food prices, a reciprocity of rules.
Frustrated farmers sensing neglect from the government are demanding increased support to navigate inflation, compete with inexpensive imports, and safeguard their livelihoods.
We're ready to stay here as long as needed until we win our case for at least a part of our demands.
Similar protests have emerged in other European countries, with concerns mounting over potential gains for far-right parties in the upcoming European Parliament elections. The backdrop includes the EU's 2023 Nature Restoration Law, mandating environmental measures on the fifth of land and sea by 2030, affecting approximately 4% of farmland. In France, farmers are anxious about potential business setbacks and are calling for relaxed regulations on fallow farmland to alleviate their concerns.
That's our goal, to reach the Élysée presidential palace by tractor. But it's going to be hard. I don't think we'll be able to reach the Élysée by tractor, but that's our dream.
Efforts by the French government to pacify farmers last week proved unsuccessful, contributing to the persistence of ongoing demonstrations. The global food crisis intensified by the conflict in Ukraine has adversely affected farmers, causing input prices to surge and creating economic challenges for many in the agricultural sector.
Let's turn to the news in brief by Salman Asib.
The UN Security Council has convened a closed consultation session on peace and security in Africa, addressing tensions between Ethiopia and Somalia. Somalia's request for this session stems from a dispute over a Somali seaport memorandum, viewed by the federal government of Somalia as a violation of international laws. Despite the disavowal of the Peace and Reconciliation Agreement by transitional authorities in Mali, Algeria is actively working to strengthen its implementation. Open communication channels are being maintained and Algeria expresses readiness for further contacts if necessary. Musa El-Kouni, a representative of Libya's Presidential Council, discusses reconciliation and social peace with the International Association of Academic Honorable Men. Confidence is expressed in the success of the National Reconciliation Project, aiming for stability across all regions in the current year. Iran and Pakistan affirm mutual respect for sovereignty and territorial integrity, expressing determination to expand security cooperation and improve bilateral relations. Recent military tensions are swiftly resolved through talks in the Pakistani capital, highlighting the commitment to fostering a positive relationship. Fires have devastated over 1,000 hectares of a national park in Argentina's Patagonia, shrouding the pristine environment in heavy smoke. Authorities are working to control the blaze, facing challenges due to adverse weather conditions, including excessive smoke. Efforts to contain the fire are underway, despite these obstacles.
The end of our news. Thank you for watching and goodbye.